Dell Technologies and AMD present the Cybersecurity tapes.
Almost every story about a cyber attack starts the same way, with something small, something you may have missed.
But these days, when there are a million small things coming straight at you, all the time, non-stop,
That is a big problem. This is the Cybersecurity tapes. I'm Steve Keniston.
and I'm Max Robidoux.
So we're doing something a little different.
Every episode features a brand new story
A fictional story.
based on real-world experiences in the world of cybercrime.
Max and I will be back to discuss how this story stacks up against reality and pass along some of our own expertise. So with that,
Roll the tape.
The incidents portrayed in this episode of the Cybersecurity tapes are fictitious. No identification with any persons, places, companies, or products is intended or should be inferred. Our story begins in the oncology research lab at Veradon Pharmaceuticals. But on this day in particular, the lab looks different. The stations are tidy, the screens are off, and loose papers have all been collected and stacked in neat piles of closed folders. The lab techs are nowhere to be seen, only a small television crew setting up for an interview, which will soon go live on the air.
We're about a minute out. Camera's all set. You look great in the monitors. The lab looks great. Any last questions before we go?
Can the camera see that dry erase board in the background?
Let me take a look. It peeks in.
Connor,
Just a
go erase that board, please.
barely.
Take a picture first.
Please be quick. We're going live in,
Amira, major crisis. Maybe. Oh, what is all this? Are you making a movie? You need to take a look at this. Right now.
Oh, no. We go live as soon as that light
This
turns red.
won't take long. It's a short poem.
A what now?
Or a riddle. It's poetic. Read it. Privately. To yourself. You're wearing a mic.
From the desk of the Phantom Meridian. Humanity always waits a little too long to upgrade. Your mighty straw house has been betrayed. The harvest is over. Your sheep have been fleeced. Now we wait for the feast. Best wishes on your final trial. Yours truly, the Cryptographer.
The Cryptographer. What is this?
Crypt who?
I'm thrown. It's creepy and dark and Cryptographer? I don't like it. Has Maria seen this?
What is happening?
Would it be okay if we took a 10-minute break so my colleague and I can address an urgent and disturbing matter?
And we are going live in 5, 4, 3, 2, now.
As Dr. Amira Shah straightens herself up for the camera, all she could think about was that message. What did it mean? And who was behind it? The whole thing reeked of bad intentions.
Give me your opinion. Which is scarier?
This or this?
I know we're the bad guys.
Is this better?
The baddest of the bad guys.
Is this better?
No mercy, no surrender. Yeah.
Is this better?
But we're talking about cancer research here. Can't we hack, like, a cosmetics company? What about that company that got caught abusing all those, what were they? Lemurs?
Let me get this straight. You don't think a big pharma corporation like Veradon abuses lemurs?
Do they?
It's irrelevant. The question was, were you able to get in?
Yes. It was easy.
You
once I discovered
beautiful,
TrialBridge Analytics and started poking around.
Baddest of bad guys.
Small-time CRO that happens to be Veradon's primary Phase 3 partner. Through their network, I was able to pivot into Veradon's network and exfiltrate encrypted archives.
I promise we will not do anything to manipulate, stall, or otherwise impede the research itself in any way. We want them to succeed. Think of this like a long-term investment, a rainy day fund. The data is encrypted at the moment and worthless to us, right? That's what they'll think. But come Q day, we'll crack open that little rainy day jar we forgot we even had, and then who knows?
Everything's a theory until it's put into practice. Quantum physics flipped classical physics on its head, so it stands to reason quantum computing will have a similar effect. No one knows definitively when Q-Day will happen. That's the day when quantum computing comes online. But everyone agrees that it will, and sooner than you think. When it does, it's going to take a lot more than practice to survive. It will take post-quantum cryptography, PQC. Without it, Your legacy encryption might as well be made of straw.
Okay, let's hit pause right there. I've never quite heard encryption described that way, made of straw, and honestly, I kind of like it. It feels like a pretty fair description of where a lot of organizations actually sit right now. Their encryption feels solid today, but it might not hold up tomorrow.
I think the big fear that is going around right now is that post quantum computing, so once quantum computers are basically made ubiquitous to everybody, so not just, hey, they're here, because we have some quantum capabilities today, but when they become available to the masses, what can those systems do to existing systems that cause harm or damage? Quantum can break our current cryptography, our encryption codes. And what used to take maybe 100 years to break the encryption can now take 10 minutes, 20 minutes. So the big fear is, what can threat actors steal that is encrypted that they could decrypt in a matter of minutes and have access to really important files from people? So post-quantum cryptography is the cryptography used once quantum is available to be able to stop that threat. And Q-Day is essentially that day those systems are available to the masses. It's not like turn of the century, year 2000 thing, because Q-Day could be any day. It could be any day for the threat actors. It could be any particular day for the rest of the world. We just don't know.
I think the uncertainty piece is what makes it so scary. Like you touched on it, we don't know exactly when it's happening. And going back to the PQC piece, what really surprised me when, this stuff first started coming out, we were first learning about it, is PQC doesn't need that special, quantum hardware or special hardware for it, right? It runs on the systems that we already have. So even if Q-Day is still a ways off, right, you don't want to wait for the storm to be overhead before you start fixing the roof. So who should actually care about this right now? Because I imagine some folks are saying, whoa, my data changes constantly. Why would anyone want to save it for years?
I mean, that's a good point. Ultimately, there are kind of two things. One thing I've been preaching since I was an analyst eons ago, doing proper data classification, knowing about your data and knowing what you need to do with it is really important. So data classification is super important. The second component is, as we've always talked about, no matter what you're thinking or what you're doing, good security hygiene. Turning on things like encryption, even heavier encryption, using MFA, using roles-based access capabilities. Those almost seem like insurmountable small things actually stop a huge percentage of the breaches. And that can just keep the threat actors away from stealing your data today, and that's most important.
That's a great point, Steve. So let's keep that in mind as we get back to the story, because our friends over at Veradon are about to learn how real all of this gets pretty quickly.
Welcome back. When you think about what's contributing to the greatest good for humanity at large, the frontrunner, at least in my portfolio, is cancer research. Our next guest joins us from the front lines of that fight. A promising new treatment for certain types of cancer is in the home stretch of clinical trials, and so far, it's shown all the makings of a miracle. I'm hesitant to use the word cure, but there are many others in the media who don't seem to mind. Dr. Amira Shah, Senior Vice President of Oncology Research for Veradon Pharmaceuticals, welcome.
Thank you for having me, for inviting me. I'm sorry, things are...
Hectic, I'm sure. So, Dr. Shah, you're a scientist, a cancer researcher. You're probably wondering why you're on a show about finance.
No, I watch your show, although I am fearful of any questions you might ask me that are actually about finance. Not my expertise, I'm afraid.
Well, it's your expertise we're interested in. We considered inviting your CEO on for this segment, but quite frankly decided someone in your position might have more authentic insight, not just parrot the company line. A literal cure for cancer will be, for you, for Veradon, and yes, the marketplace, a sea change in the healthcare industry. Many analysts are projecting a 10-figure payday for Veradon. So, what are we looking at here? Is this new drug, in fact, the legendary cure for cancer? Where are you with the trials?
I don't know if I'm at liberty to put any timeline on when the trials will be complete. These things are a process.
What's the ballpark?
It's a process. Molecular chemistry is only one small part of a much larger machine that it takes to bring any new drug to market.
Could be a big ballpark.
I'll say this. We're road mapping in units of months now. It used to be years.
So, what you're telling me is we could be months away from a cure for cancer.
I wouldn't say cure.
Decades of research, years of clinical trials, and now you're holding the golden ticket. You're sitting on perhaps the most valuable data in the history of the world. I'm sure a lot of people out there would love to get their grubby little hands on it. I myself may be one of them. So, what security measures is Veradon taking to protect that data goldmine?
I'll have to include cybersecurity as another topic where my answers may disappoint, unfortunately. I do work very closely with the CISO and the cybersecurity team. They're always updating and upgrading everything constantly. I don't even have access to most parts of the company network anymore like I used to, and I'm the vice president. So I think they're running a tight ship.
It's reassuring to hear Veradon's taking cybersecurity seriously. If only there was a cure for cyber attacks, right?
I think there is. Not a cure, preventative measures. My security lead, Jesse Ortiz over there, drills it into me. Diet, exercise, but for computers. We, Veradon, we do all of them, is what I'm trying to say, as far as I can tell. You'd have to invite the CISO on next time, or Jesse.
Oh, I was under the impression that Veradon didn't currently have a designated CISO. That's Chief Information Security Officer, for anyone unfamiliar. That's something the market pays attention to, with the kind of investments we're talking about.
Veradon has a CISO, I'm pretty sure. Currently, we do. In fact, I need to call her the second this interview's over. Can you edit that? You wanted to hear about the trials?
Dr. Shah's confusion was because Veradon's acting CISO wasn't a traditional CISO, but rather a virtual one. Someone helping the company out during a transition. Their virtual CISO, Maria, is a seasoned cybersecurity expert and a post-quantum awareness security advocate. She has been fighting to accelerate Veradon's PQC migration for 18 months. Repeatedly, she's been told that the migration is on track for 2028, but that timeline itself is now in question. The last thing she needs is another cryptic message from the cryptographer.
From the desk of the Phantom Meridian. Tick, tock, tick, tock. I hope you haven't forgotten about the clock. Remember, you have the key, but we have the lock. Or is it the other way around? Yours truly, the cryptographer.
Of all the names they could have picked for themselves, that's the one they picked? It's gotta be just someone having a little fun with us. What well-adjusted adult would call themselves the cryptographer? Did anything show up in the system logs?
No ransomware. But there is evidence that TLS and VPN traffic may have been captured from a misconfigured edge device. One of our partners...
Harvest is over?
Trial Bridge Analytics. They've reported some anomalies, but nothing conclusive.
Harvest is over.
On our end, we logged them as normal partner activity.
Harvest now, decrypt later.
That sounds like something a cryptographer would say.
Ouch. Look, nothing was isolated. Everything spread across everything. Cloud-based platforms, partners and CROs, backups and archives copied, including long-term data sets.
Dr. Shah, even if they were able to exfiltrate the archives, it's encrypted. It's worthless to them because we hold the decryption keys.
For now, maybe. Maybe is the problem. First things first, we need an update on the status of every PQC project in the pipeline. Find out what data was using post-quantum cryptography and what data wasn't.
When will we know how bad this is?
When is Q-Day?
What is Q-Day?
So the sheep represents the encrypted archives.
Could be legacy RSA.
That got fleeced.
CLS session traffic. VPN handshake data. All of the above. Or he's just a truly cringy poet. We need to figure out exactly what data was harvested and how that data was protected.
Is the regulatory approval process at risk?
We might need to delay the drug to reestablish data integrity.
How long will that take?
We'll have to wait and see. In the meantime, we need to assume that the data is compromised.
Data security is even more important in the era of AI. as the use of digitization, cloud computing, AI, and other emerging technologies fuel the growth of data, the need for advanced security measures becomes even more pressing. The heightened need for security is further amplified by the increased global emphasis on privacy regulations and the severe penalties for breaches, highlighting the unparalleled value of data amid rising security risks. Built in at the silicon level, AMD Infinity Guard offers the advanced capabilities required to defend against international and external threats and help keep your data safe.
The hackers did exactly what they said they would. They waited patiently. But now that morning has come. Q-Day has arrived.
You're a genius. We've got everything. All of Veradon's IP. Drug formulations, trial protocols, safety signals, regulatory submission drafts,
Cryptographer
and patient cohort data.
Strikes again.
You're sticking with that name?
It's a good name. It's been a minute, so let's check in to see what Veradon's been up to in the news. In the meantime, I wrote a message to send them for just this special occasion. We send that now, and then?
And then what?
Exactly.
Exactly what?
We watch them squirm.
To what end?
Just send the message. We might be too late. Looks like the drug hit the market back in June. Even still, I'll take a good squirm.
So we just heard the cryptographer say that Veradon went public. They released the IP, the drug trials, all before the cryptographer had a chance to decrypt it. Steve, we've heard this concept, harvest now, decrypt later. Could you break down what this means?
Yeah. So that was the harvest piece. They were harvesting the data and they were keeping it, thinking that they may have access to this really important data, which it is very important. So that this whole notion of harvest now, decrypt later is kind of the biggest fear that customers have today, right? That's the big fear of what are they stealing and what are they going to be able to do with it? And will I be prepared for it or have access to utilize that data in the best way?
So you just touched on the biggest fear. What I think the biggest mistake is, it's the notion of, we'll deal with PQC later. So the data might feel safe today, right? It's encrypted, but what we're really doing is we're handing them a locked box and betting that they never get the key. And the lock might feel strong right up until the day someone has that key. And as you mentioned, with the rise of all this new quantum cryptography, it's going to be a matter of when we get that key. So thinking about it this way, and the kind of the most costly version of that mindset of the we'll deal with it later, every year you wait, the problem's just going to get bigger with more systems, more data, more places that encryption's buried, and it's going to compound. So this isn't a quick fix, right? You can't just push a button on Tuesday and be quantum ready. It's going to take some time. Cryptography lives in everything, Steve. It's applications, certificates, identity systems, backups, you name it, right? Untangling all of that, upgrading that. It's going to take a long time. So that's why starting now matters so much. But let's get practical. If someone's listening and thinking, okay, where do I even begin? What would be the first move that you'd tell them?
For now, what's most important, and the thing to think about is that no matter what you think, if the threat actors have harvested your data, there's absolutely nothing you can do except wait and then see what happens. So it's important to note that there's nothing that you can do once the data has been harvested, that you just have to wait and see if those threat actors are going to decrypt the data and use it against you, or if that data is even important once it is decrypted. So this is where we go back to really having a good understanding of your data inventory, right? Really understanding and classifying your data, knowing its value and how long that retention is when it starts to lose its value, right? So that's critically important. That's probably one of the number one things to think about. The other thing is leveraging good security hygiene, doing everything you can to do that. Reduce the attack surface, right? We always talk about that, Max. Keeping those threat actors out of your environment as best you can. Some people are going to get through. It is what it is, right? But putting those systems in place to be able to keep them out as best you can are really, really important. The next step you want to take is figuring out, just like you said, Max, it's all over the place. What does your crypto inventory look like? Where do you use encryption? Where are your assigned certificates? And the other thing you want to plan for is making sure that you have a good inventory of your cryptography, understanding where you use encryption, understanding where you have signed certificates, making sure that you have all of that in a common place that you know you're going to have to update, because over time, these things, you're going to want to make sure that you're in transition.
Yeah, there's one other idea I want to touch on. It's something called crypto agility. I really like this idea. Let me define it quickly. It's the ability to swap out one cryptographic algorithm for another without having to rebuild the whole system. So think of it like you're designing a building. You can replace the locks without tearing down the walls. So when new standards arise, agile organizations, they can just adapt. And a lot of teams are also looking at hybrid approaches, right? So running classical and PQC encryption together side by side. So it gives you that protection today while also having that bridge to tomorrow. So you're covered even while these standards keep maturing and keep changing over time. So Steve, I think the key takeaway we're hearing here is Q-Day may be uncertain. We don't know exactly when it is, but the work is kind of clear. The people who are going to start now get to do it on their own terms, right?
That's correct. I think you hit the nail on the head with that crypto agility. One of the nice things about this whole transition is it's going to take a long time. You're going to be able to and want to put things in place to be able to migrate these things into your quantum ready systems, and it's going to all take place over time. So, your servers may be ready one day, your storage may be ready the next day, your data protection environment may be ready the third day. Being able to do like a rolling change or have the flexibility to upgrade certain things, but run both in conjunction and not have there be fighting between all the different systems is going to be really, really important. And this again is where practice comes into play, right? Making sure that you have a good understanding of what's going on within your environment and knowing what's going to happen over time.
That's right. And I know we have the kind of nefarious bad guy, the cryptographer in the story, but this isn't really a story about fear, right? It's a story about being ready. The tools exist, the path's clear. Every step you take now is going to put you in a stronger position later, which is a much better place to be than where Veradon's been sitting for most of the story, right? So let's get back to it and see how our good friend Maria handles her moment in the spotlight here.
Signed, the Cryptographer? I mean, doesn't exactly strike fear in the heart, does it? Makes me picture a jungle expedition turn of the century. The character no one really likes that's always holding a protractor.
Bookish kid from the streets, acts dopey so everyone lets their guard down, but sprains their ankle on the first day of the expedition.
Well, the Cryptographer, if you're watching, message received. But I must say, I like the message our guest today is sharing more. Maria, is there anything you'd like to say to Mr. Cryptographer?
I wish you'd stop doing what you do, but if you're incapable of that, then no. You reap what you sow. See, I'm a cringy poet too. This is only lighthearted here today because Veradon was lucky. Prepared, but lucky, just by how things timed out. Tick-tock, tick-tock, right?
Right. Well, here's a quick word from our sponsor.
If the thought of hackers with quantum computing technology keeps you up at night, don't worry. You're not alone. Best-in-class encryption may feel safe today, but tomorrow, who knows? If you are experiencing vulnerable archives, aging VPN traffic, or exposed partner connections, ask your security team about post-quantum cryptography today. Because without it, today's encrypted data may be tomorrow's trending topic. PQC is a once-daily practice for organizations experiencing cryptographic stagnation in clinical-grade enterprise environments. PQC helps reduce exposure while supporting a phased transition to post-quantum protections over time. PQC works best when paired with principles such as security by design, cyber resilience, and cryptographic agility. In most cases, results include increased confidence before, during, and after a PQC transition. Contact your security team immediately about any legacy RSA, long retention sensitive data, vulnerable third-party partners, unsegmented backups, or a history of saying, "we'll deal with that later." Because later, no one knows. Might be 4 days from now. That's the problem. Possible side effects of delaying post-quantum cryptography include harvest now, decrypt later, cyber attack exposure, stolen data, copied archives, exposed VPN handshakes, regulatory delays, compromised intellectual property, emergency migrations, surprise replacement of non-quantum ready technology, partner-driven breaches, loss of customer trust, prolonged incident response, and an uncomfortable need to explain to leadership why encrypted did not mean safe forever. Take control of your quantum exposure. PQC. It's literally your only option.
This episode of the Cybersecurity Tapes was produced by Dell Technologies and AMD. The hosts and executive producers are Steve Keniston and Max Robidoux. It was written by Steve Keniston, Max Robidoux, Mike Wiebe, and Bradley Parrott, directed by Bradley Parrott. Featuring performances by Alexandra Griffin, Shelley Knight, Oliver Wen, Ian Russell, Anil Sankaramanchi, and Danu Mara. Sound design by Andy Slater. If you enjoyed this episode, please like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Or visit thecybersecuritytapes.com to learn more.